Are you ready for this roller coaster? Because I certainly wasn't. My first mistake was using this earth tone air dry clay. It's a cheap kids craft type clay, and I'm pretty sure it was left over from one of my kids' school projects from goodness knows how many years ago. It was sticky, it was far too wet, and it was pretty much unusable by this point. If you saw my little teaser into this week's video, you would have heard me say that it was based around paint, but no paint would be involved. And that's because I planned on using a mix of the earth tone air dry clay and this white air dry clay. But now that I have scratched what looks like the contents of a baby nappy clay, I am going to have to paint the white clay. Just wanted to explain, I wasn't clickbaiting, I wasn't lying, I really wasn't going to use paint. But I do have to say this white air dry clay is so much better. It's softer, it's not too wet, and it's far more manageable. I finally put some baking paper down. I have no idea why I didn't do this from the start, but it does make things easier. Now to trim up the sides and make it into a square pallet shape. I've purposely made a small one. I want something little that I can use when I'm not using too many paints. I've lightly dipped my finger into the water, which helps me smooth out the edges and the surface. I guess you can say at this point, things are going pretty smoothly. Now that the palette's all nice and smooth, I'm using my ball stylus to make a few little paint wells. I'm now moving on to the paintbrush rest. To make this, it's so easy. I've rolled out some clay and using the end of a large paintbrush to make the divots. A bit more of the water on the finger trick to smooth it all out, and it's done. Look how pretty they are. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, so these have fully dried now, but you can see there's a little bit of a lip. So I want to give them a good sand and just smooth them out. I'm pretty sure that lip was left over from having a bit too much water on the surface while it was drying. Now to give them both a good sand. Time to paint. I've picked out the colour by Matisse. It's called Australian Ghost Gum. It's a really nice pale earthy toned colour, which I thought would go perfect with my rustic little palette and paintbrush holder. I'm going to base coat both of these in this colour, and then once it's dried, I'll add in a few little burnt umber flicks and a few little white flicks. And just when I thought things were going smoothly, crap. It's like plastic. Okay, so basically the paint is not sticking. It's literally peeling off. Round two. I'm going back to my trusty old polymer clay. Old is definitely the key here. It's so dry and brittle. I'm going to have to cut it up into small pieces. Okay, this clay is seriously hard. I am having a lot of trouble squashing it. So lucky I've got my pasta maker. I'm going to hit it with the hammer a few times and flatten it, and then I'll wind it through the pasta maker and try to condition the clay that way. On second thoughts, I'm going to cut them into thinner pieces because that's going to take forever. It's so crumbly and plasticky and dry. It's going to take quite a few passes through the machine before it gets right. This brain is far too big to squash with my hands, so chop it up and start all over again. Yay, I'm finally getting somewhere with it. Now that I've passed it through the pasta machine a million times, I'm going to roll it up into some balls. Now that I've got these in manageable conditioned sizes, I'm going to roll it out into a nice big flat tray. It's finally perfectly smooth. Let's have some fun. Oh. I'm such a dag. I've trimmed it down into a more manageable size, and now I'm straightening off the edges with my clay cutter. Trim the corner for a bit of detail and onto the ball stylus again to make those paint divots. At least I've had practice at this recently. I've also rolled out a second slab of clay and placed this one on top of it. And I'm trimming it after using the ball stylus because it does tend to slip and slide around a little bit and lose its shape. Incoming! Now for the easy part. Roll the ball into a log shape, make it nice and smooth, then use a pen to mark out the divots and push down further to make deeper wells. Finally, after days and hours and a whole lot of stuff, it's finally coming together. A quick little trim on both ends to make it nice and squared, pop it on the baking tray, and then into the oven. Yeah, take note of the timer here. Somebody walked away from the oven and forgot about it for 3 hours. Yep, she's a bit crispy. Thankfully, it's still savable, but very annoying. It's definitely a tomorrow problem. It's far too late for this. Okay, here they are. Very, very burnt, but still solid, no cracks. They're definitely savable. What I am going to do is give it a good million coats of gesso, and then I'll do my painting design over the top once it's completely sealed. In total, I done about 3 coats of gesso, then gave it all a light sand, and then a couple of coats of plain white. For the edges and the underside of the palette and the brush holder, I've made up a mixture of brown matter, burnt umber, and a bit of white. I accidentally got some on the top side of the palette, so I'm using a damp sponge to wipe that off. The reason I was wiping it off is because I'll be keeping that surface plain white. For now, anyway. All up, I ended up doing 3 coats of this colour. However, in the last 2 coats, I didn't add the white as I thought I wanted it a little bit darker than what it was coming out in the original coat. I'm now adding some water to that leftover paint to thin it down so I can tap the brush and get these splatter marks. I'm now using Van Dyke Brown with a fair bit of water and using the same technique to get those splatter marks. To glaze the palette and the brush holder and really give it that final gloss, I'm using a triple thick gloss glaze by Deco Art. It's super thick and super shiny. It's pretty close to resin without actually being resin, which will be perfect for all of the cleaning and wiping that I'll be doing on the palette. Well, that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget the notification bell. It really does help me out and help my channel grow. With that being said, I will see you next week for week F. Bye.